Hey, welcome to Viking Preparedness. I am Pastor Joe Fox. Continuing in the small series on leadership things, on leadership, but we're certainly not covering the whole subject matter of leadership. I want to talk today about standards. Standards. Any good unit, any good mag or crew or team or group has standards. The higher the standards, the better the organization. People should have standards. Some people have no standards. And in general, people think, yeah, I have standards. I wouldn't do this, I would do that. It's outside of my standards. Or organizations have standards. We expect you to be at work on time. Do you really? We're going to kind of get into some of those things. Or I knew a woman who went to like national level machinist competitions where they would give them something that they had to machine, grind down, build, fabricate, and there were standards that these things were held to. 1/100th of an inch or something. I don't know. And it either achieved standards or it didn't. So let's talk about standards, and then maybe you can start thinking about establishing some standards for your unit, your group, your crew, your mag, your family, yourself. The first thing about a standard is it has to be quantifiable, meaning you have to be able to put a number or an amount or a specific. It meets, is it meeting this criteria? Yes, it's met the criteria and now it's exceeding the criteria. But it has to be quantifiable. It can't just be, all right, our standard is you have to have a nice looking beard. Well, what does that mean? Some people think my beard looks ridiculous. That's not quantifiable. Our standard is that all men must have a beard that's at least 4 inches below the chin. Whatever. Clearly I'm just making something up silly. But it needs to be quantifiable. It should be written down. Standards should be written down. Someone should be able to refer to, here they are. Sticking with beards. I got hired by the federal government for a while, and I had started growing a beard for 7 months before I got hired. And as I went in for my interviews, because I did something else for 7 months, I liked my beard. I thought it was cool. It was all dark then. I trimmed it up really short and neat. I had hair then too. It's like I had combed hair. And I got cut and looked good for my interviews. And I was hired. And then I read the employee handbook, and it had standards in it. And one of those standards is male employees may have a neatly groomed beard. To me, that's a loophole you can drive a truck through. So I started to see how far I could grow my beard before somebody said something. And man, it got down to here. No one ever said anything. So that wasn't really a quantifiable standard. What's neatly groomed mean, right? All right, so number one, there's 4 things. Number one, your standards should be quantifiable. Number 2, your standards should be achievable. It's no sense having a prepper crew, Viking crew, survivalist mag, and say, all people in this mag must do, here's a quantifiable standard, 100 pull-ups within 3 minutes without dropping from the bar. Okay, that's certainly quantifiable. It's not achievable by the vast majority of humans, right? Can't do that. And so what good is it to have a standard that nobody can achieve? Now, there's a lot to be said on this. Number one, you don't know what your people can achieve until you do a diagnostic test on the subject of the standard. And so that has to be done first. You have to see where your people are at. As I said in the last video, most people will rise to the level of expectations you set for them. But let's face it, the 65-year-old overweight woman is not going to be able to do 20 pull-ups with her full battle rattle. What is she doing with battle rattle anyway? But you get my point? So it has to be achievable. It has to be in the realm of possibilities. Now, I'll give you a personal example. We do not have a shooting standard for the Shofarians. We have talked about this. And in my mind, what we need to do is set up a simple test that's about where we want people to be, have everybody shoot it and see how we're doing. And if it's achievable, then we'll make it. Some people may not meet that standard in that pre-test, if you will, and that's okay with additional training and stuff and dun. But I don't think we're going to be able to set as a standard, for example, everyone needs to do 2 controlled pairs, double taps on 3 targets from the holster in 3.2 seconds. I just don't think that's going to happen. So they have to be achievable. But to determine what achievable is, you got to kind of know where your people are at, right? Unless you have a whole body of work. I'm going to back up because my wife and daughter are returning. Unless you have a whole body of work behind you, like in the military. In the military, there are standards for physical fitness. They're based on age. If you're this age or this sex, here's what the standard is for push-ups in 2 minutes, sit-ups in 2 minutes, and how fast you can run the 2-mile run. That's when I was in. They've changed the PT test, but there are still standards. There's not a whole body of work on the new standards, though, because they don't know what people can do. But on the other one, they kind of knew what to expect from people, and so, hey, people can achieve the standard, so can you, troop. Work harder. All right, achievable. I'm going to make this quicker now because I have work to do. The standards that you set that are quantifiable, you can write them down, they're achievable, people can achieve these standards. You have to test them at a regular basis, annually, biannually, whatever. You have to ensure that your people are achieving those standards, are reaching those standards. And the only way you can do that is by applying a test. And so whatever the standard is, test people on it to ensure they can do it. And it's not a one and done. A lot of police departments, you have to go to a police academy, and when you go through the academy, there are physical fitness standards. You have to be able to do this many push-ups, this kind of run, carry this weight, whatever, and then after that, they're never tested again in their career. So how do you know how fit they are? Well, you know by looking at them that they're not, right? And so you have to test your standards. So quantifiable, achievable, tested. Hey, thanks for picking that up. And 4th point, they have to be enforced. It does no good to have a standard if you don't enforce it. All employees must be on time. That's the standard. But nobody cares if Bob and Jill and Jim come in 3 times a week, 15, 20 minutes late. Well, then it's not really a standard. It's stated as a standard, but because it's not enforced, it's not a standard. Another thing it has to be is enforceable. When I was first in Special Forces, the physical fitness standard that they had, here comes a shocker, was the Army standard, which almost everybody could do a lot better than. You have to do this many push-ups in 2 minutes. You have to do this many sit-ups in 2 minutes, and you have to run the 2 miles this fast. Well, again, that's broken down by sex. We're all males, and age. So there's different age groups, and the young guys got to run faster and do more push-ups than the old guys, right? And so the Special Forces standard, enforceable, was the Army PT test. Well, man, every now and then, because there's always one that slips through the cracks, you'd have a guy on a detachment who was a slug. I mean, he just couldn't keep up with his guys. We're all going to go to the woods and do this really hard thing for 3 days, and he's always way back there, and we're always waiting on him, and dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. And so he's not physically up to par. And yet he can pass the Army PT test, so you can't punish him for it. You can't enforce that standard. Things have changed now. Praise the Father. And that was rare, but it was a real example. In the Ranger Battalion, at the time, they had higher standards. I don't know how they did it. God bless them for doing it, but they had higher standards. And then, as I did in the write-up yesterday, there's this thing called peer pressure, and that's what we ended up applying, was peer pressure. And that's a real thing too. And in a way, peer pressure is enforceable. But really what I'm getting to with your standards is quantitative. They have to be written down. They have to be achievable. People have to be able to reach your standard, the people that you're talking about. They have to be tested and they have to be enforced, legally enforced. If it's written down, then you have to be able to enforce it. So think about these things when you're working with your detachment. What is the standard, let's just say for food, to your detachment? My brain's back there. Your crew. you have a crew, 3 families. All right, what's your standard for how much food every family has to have? It has to be quantifiable. It has to be, you need this much food. It has to be achievable. They have to be able to get that much food, based on their economic, social, whatever parameters that are there. You have to test it, meaning someone's got to go inspect it, right? And you also inspect for standards. Make sure that, yeah, in fact, they do have that. And then it has to be enforced. And by that, in this particular instance, if they don't have the food, they're not on the crew. We're not taking you aboard if you don't have the crew. We do stuff like that here. So think about that one more time, just to wrap it up. Quantitative, achievable, tested, and enforced or enforceable. Those are the things when you have your standards. I am interested in your comments. All right.